Most people choose rail fence for the look, but the right choice comes down to what you need it to do. This is the rail fence episode. All right, today we're talking about rail fence. We're going to cover three things. We're going to talk about the material options for a rail fence, why you would ever choose a rail fence, and then some of the pros and cons of each material. So let's get into it. All right, so here beside us is a treated pine wood 3-rail rail fence. And so as we're talking about rail fence, sometimes people refer to it as a ranch fence, but there are three main styles. There could be others, but the most common three styles would be a wood rail fence like this, and predominantly in the pine like we're looking at here. And then there would be vinyl rail fence, and then also a cedar split rail type fence are the three most common for this type of rail fence. So secondly, why would you ever choose a rail type fence? And so rail fences are great for boundary lines and curb appeal, especially on larger lots and acreage. It's also good for containment. And then it's great for a clean look, but also keeps things open. As you can see the view behind us, if you're not wanting to obstruct the view, it works well and functions well with those things. So they're good for boundaries, for pet and animal containment, and good for clean open spaces where you want to preserve the view. Specifically for a wood rail fence like this, as far as wood rail, you can do it in a few different styles. You can do a 2-rail, which is not as common, but would be similar to this, but just 2 horizontal rails. You can do 3-rail, which is one of the most common options. And then you can do 4-rail as well. 4 would just have a 4th rail equally spaced through here. Fun fact, 4-rail, if you've got livestock, is typically what you want to do because it's got a smaller space to where cows and things like that can't fit their heads through and push through the openings. Then the 4th would be on a wood style like this. It would be applicable to both wood and vinyl, is a crossbuck. So it's essentially 4 rails, but those 2 middle rails cross. The pros and cons of a wood like this is wood has got a real warm and natural look, as you can see here, as opposed to like the vinyl. And it's very strong and durable and beefy. So it's got good strength. With the wood, it's going to be more likely to bow and warp. It is a natural product with grains, and it's exterior exposed to the wet and the weather. So with that, with those changes and things, and with expansion and contraction, it can move and bow. So that's something to take into consideration and can play into the long-term maintenance of it. But it is very, very strong, very durable. Now also sometimes with animals, you need to consider is some animals are prone to chew on the wood and may be more drawn to chew on the wood, whereas opposed to the vinyl, they wouldn't actually try to chew on that. So that's something to also consider when you're comparing those two. So that covers most of the wood. Now, as far as like the investment of the wood versus vinyl or the cedar split rail, this that you see here in the pine is probably going to be the most economical, and then from there is going to be the vinyl and the cedar split rail. Now with the cedar split rail, it is going to be similar. It's going to come in they're not going to be able to do a crossbuck in that, but you can do a 2-rail, 3-rail, or a 4-rail. And it's got a really cool rustic look. So if you're looking for a particular look of the rustic, rough cedar, then that's an advantage of it. It's got a really unique, cool look. Then the cedar is going to have less moisture content, so it's going to be less likely to bow and warp as opposed to a pine. And it's also going to be naturally resistant to rot and decay and insects, so it'll typically have a little bit longer lifespan if you're comparing it to the pine. All right, now on this property there happens to be an existing 3-rail white vinyl fence this has been here for many, many years. We actually didn't install this one. We just did the wood portion recently. But to kind of talk through and contrast the pros and cons of the vinyl is going to be, honestly, in the rail fence, it's pretty comparable and economical to the wood. Typically, vinyl can be like 2 to 2.5 times more when you're comparing it to a wood product. But this setup as a rail fence, the vinyl is actually pretty competitive, and it is obviously a man-made product, so it doesn't have the wood grains and the propensity to bow and to warp, so it's going to stay clean and straight and not be wavy or bow. Now it is a different look where it's going to be more shiny and sleek and not as warm and natural as the wood looks, and but it's going to be less maintenance. Now here you can see the maintenance that you do have on the vinyl is that every so often you are probably going to need to, with just a soap and water, or just a light pressure wash, is to clean it, kind of like a vinyl siding. But outside of that, outside of just a cleaning every now and then it's going to be an option that's going to be very long lasting and is going to stay consistent over the years. So with a good quality vinyl, you should get at least a good 20-30 years out of it. As we talked to it, now it will actually bend. So if you have animals that are pushing up on it, it actually is a good thing that it can actually give and bend a little bit before it breaks. So it helps good with containment. It also is unlike a natural wood where most animals are less likely to want to try to chew on it or gnaw on it. So in a lot of cases with that, it works well for containment, and is a very good option to consider for a rail fence. All right, so to recap today, we talked about the 3 most common types of rail fence, which would be wood, cedar split rail, and vinyl. And then second, we talked about why you would choose a rail fence, or sometimes referred to as a ranch style fence. And then third, we talked about between the 3 most common types, we talked about the pros and cons of all 3 of those. So I hope you found that helpful, and make sure and like this video. It helps out a ton, and subscribe to the channel for more fences just like this.